Hello, tiny friends. Welcome back to Tiny Keyhole Minis. I'm Jolene. Welcome back to Tiny Keyhole Minis. I'm Jolene. Today I'm going to be reposting this project video. Originally, I posted this project back in the beginning of my channel and it had two parts to it. So I decided to make some cuts and edits and combine them into one video. So today I'm going to share how I created these vintage portable home movie screens and what inspired this miniature creation. If you haven't seen this project yet, please stick around. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, tiny friends, let's talk about the reason and the inspiration for these portable movie screens. This is a Bentley House Minis projector kit, and originally I purchased 3 of them because I pretty much knew what I wanted to do with them. If you're interested in this kit and would like to purchase one for yourself, I will put the link to Era's website in the description box below. This was the projector that she had placed inside the Addams family house. So if you're familiar with that project or have seen some of those videos, you may have seen this projector in the house. This kit is super awesome as is. Included in the kit, you'll get additional pieces for detailing and also an extra movie reel with film. And Era already has a really great tutorial, including great tips on putting this projector together. And that is why I didn't show putting it together, but I will talk about some of the additional parts that I added to give it a little bit more realism. So I really didn't take away any of the details. I didn't modify this one. I just added more parts to enhance the details that were already there and maybe added a few extra details. I'll start with the focus knob. I added a metal hardware piece. It's just a jewelry clasp, a necklace clasp or bracelet clasp, and one side looked exactly like the part that I was looking for. So it worked out really well. My favorite addition is the little flip switch that I created with the tip of a toothpick and a metal ring. And then I used a knob from a wristwatch to create a metal knob. And on the back, I just added a couple extra beads. I paired those with a couple jump rings for added detail. Here is the cord, and you can create your cord any way you would like. I chose to ravel mine up, and then I added a plug on the end of the cord, which I believe is in the kit. So here is the projector, and I'll show you the 3 that I did in the very end. I'm going to create the screen first, and then I'll move into the stand. I found this brand new package of fabric sheet cotton poplin at a thrift store. It is washable, it's printable, and it was unopened. It came with 5 sheets. It feels kind of like canvas. So I thought, let's give this a shot. If it works, it'll be amazing. I'm not sure if you can find this exact brand, but I'm pretty sure you can find similar printable fabric online. I also used a sheet of this to create the first rugs in the Josephine house, so it's good for that as well. Here's a practice screen that I did. It's just paper, but I wanted to put my concept together before actually using the fabric print. Number 3 is the fabric print, and I did want to go with this screen, but I changed my mind and chose a vintage photo of my grandmother. And right now I'm just showing you my sketching plans, my project plans, and what I came up with as far as the measurements and all that good stuff, kind of like the blueprints of this project. This doesn't happen very often. This is me just trying to be an organized creator. I'm going to use Mod Podge to coat the back of the image that I chose. So I printed the image that I wanted and I added to it to make it look like how the screen actually looked. So this is an image of my grandmother in her younger years sitting with 2 kids. I believe the 2 kids are maybe her friends' children. I'm not really sure. They're not related as far as I know. I am pretty much finished with the attic in the Josephine house, minus a few accessories that I would like to add. And when I come back to the house, I will be setting up this scene in the attic. I'm using a very clean piece of wax paper and just taping down the image so that I can coat the back side. A very important lesson that I learned while doing this project is to make sure that your surface is clean, because once you apply the Mod Podge, it will seep through. If you have paint or dirt on your surface, that will attach itself to your image and ruin it. Next, I'm using a very soft, flexible brush, and I'm using a pretty big brush so that I can get as much coverage and the least amount of strokes as possible. I'm just going from one side to the next, and I am blending in the transition lines from the brush strokes. I'm also just picking out any clumps of Mod Podge that are left behind by the brush and then going over that as well. So I'm going to give it a nice even layer and let it dry completely. So when doing something like this, you just really want to take your time, use a bigger, softer brush. The more even coverage you can get with the Mod Podge, the better the results are going to be. So you don't want to use a harsh bristle brush because that's going to leave a lot of stroke marks behind. Here's an example of what that could look like. So this was one that I did, and I really wasn't paying attention to my application. Once this piece is finished, you'll see the extreme difference in the results. Okay, so the first layer is dry. I'm going to take a sanding block and I'm just going to sand it to smooth down any strokes, any lines, just to give it a smoother surface. I'm not sanding really hard. I'm actually doing this quite lightly and giving a second coat of the Mod Podge in the same manner. That second coat is dry, and I'm going to go over it with some black acrylic paint. And I'm going to let that dry. Okay, the black is dry, and I'm giving its final coat of Mod Podge. The same way, again, picking out the clumps, lightly going over that to blend it down. So here are the results I got when taking my time and patiently working with the Mod Podge. Mod Podge is so finicky, and we really haven't been the greatest of friends along my miniature journey. I guess it was all about figuring out how Mod Podge likes to be applied and what tools Mod Podge likes to work with. And once I got that down, I was able to get better results and the type of results that I was looking for. I'm pretty happy with the results this time around. It did take some time to get there, but I did get there. Okay, so moving on to the top and bottom part of the screen, I'm going to use some cardstock, and this was just something I salvaged from a package. This piece measures about 2 inches in width and about 3¼ inches in length. I went ahead and evenly scored 4 sections across the piece. And then in the very middle section, I cut a line down the middle and left a little space on each end. Now I'm going to go ahead and paint it with black acrylic paint. This is going to be the base coat. Once that first layer is dry, I'm going to go into the cracks where I scored and paint those as well. Now that the black is dried, I'm going to use Metallic Antique Gold by Folk Art and give it a coat of this. I'm going to use these skinny sticks, and I'm going to place one on the top and one on the bottom. I'm just going to cut them down with my craft knife. I want them to hang slightly over each edge. The skinny sticks are going to help support the screen while it's attached to the bottom and the top base. I'm going to use a little bit of Aleene's tacky glue and a toothpick, and I'm just going to apply some along the top, right on the edge. Glue the stick down, and I'm going to let that set for a few minutes before working it. Right now, I'm just going to double check it to make sure that it's about the same length as my previous screens that I've already made. I'm going to use this brown craft paper that I've already pre-painted using the same black acrylic base coated with the antique gold. I've cut the paper to a rectangle shape that's approximately about 4 inches long. Now I'm going to use a little bit of the tacky glue just to run it along the inside of the stick. And I'm going to roll the stick forward, rolling the screen downward. This will actually create some bulk around the top stick to make it look thicker than it actually is. So when I wrap it with the paper, it's going to be the size that I actually need it to be. Now that I have it rolled down to where I need the placement to be, I'm going to attach the craft paper to it and just wrap it around from the front to the back. And the goal is to just make this top piece look like the metal piece on the top. So you're going to see me using different tools to tuck it in, trimming the excess paper away, adding more glue, one section at a time. And I'm just trying to use and do what I can to achieve this look. And in the end, it's going to look like the screen is actually inside the top piece, just like on the real ones. Well, this little scraper tool was super helpful to tuck the paper in and get a nice solid crease. And then I'm just going to go in behind that and trim away as much of the paper as I can. And I'm getting really close to that crease that I created. I'll follow that up with gluing down any sections that need to be glued down. Next, I'm going to use my miter shears to trim off the ends. And I'm going to take these tiny skinny strips of the craft paper that I've painted with my silver chrome paint. And I'm just going to glue this around the edges. I'm going to let the glue set for a couple minutes before actually winding it around the top part. Meanwhile, I'm going to cut it down to about the size that I think I need. This will create the end caps at the top of the bar. Once I get that completed, I can go back in with any black or gold paint and touch up any areas that need to be touched up. As for these little guys that I trimmed off, I'm going to save these. Who knows what I'm going to use them for? But they remind me of little cork tops for wine bottles. Okay, now it's time to put the bottom part together. I can't tell you how many times I did this wrong. The screen needs to be placed through the slit that I created, and I'm just pulling that through. And then I'm going to attach the stick along the bottom edge, just like I did with the top, only this time I'm going to place the stick on the back side of the screen. And I'm just going to roll the screen downward from the back instead of from the front. This will help create some balance for the screen in the end. Now I'm just going to pull the screen all the way to touch the base, and I'm just double checking that I didn't leave too much of the white showing along the bottom. I'm gluing this stick down and attaching it to the cardstock. I'm using a cotton swab and just a little bit of water to clean up any excess glue. Okay, now that the screen is nice and stable, I can go ahead and close up the bottom base. I'm just using a nice thin, even layer of tacky glue. I'm just going to fold it down and close the two bottom flaps together. And I'm just lightly pinching it and adding a little bit of pressure just so that it attaches nice and tightly. I'm using the back of one of my detail brushes to actually get inside and press down that inside flap so that it attaches nice and tight, making sure that the two pieces are completely glued together. This is what it looks like so far. I just need to add the end caps onto the bottom and the handle onto the top. For the handle, I'm just using a piece of wire that I've bent into the shape that I would like. And I've also created a couple brackets out of chipboard. These will help support the handle and hold it in place. Now, originally, this was the first design that I was going to go with, but I did come up with a new design for the handle, so I swapped that out. For the end caps, I used cardstock, and then I added caviar beads to act as little bolts around the front and the back sides. Now that the handle and the end caps are on, I'm going in to add some aging. I'm just using some watered down acrylic paints and going into the cracks and crevices. This helps bring out the bolts and makes it look a little older. Hello, tiny friends. It's time for a coffee break. If you would like to help support my miniature craft and my channel, you can help buy me a coffee. It's super easy. Just scan that code or click the link in the description box below. All coffee proceeds will be going towards the purchase of a 3D resin printer. Everyone that buys me a coffee will be gifted a miniature package of the first 3D printed creations. The more coffees you buy me, the bigger your package will be. Now back to our project. Okay, tiny friends, the screen is completed, and now it's time to create the stand. So I've already pre-cut different shapes that I came up with. I used my Cricut design and my Cricut machine to cut these pieces out. And I'm using photo paper because at this time it was the only paper that I had thick enough that was going to work for what I needed. I have two groups of these triangle shapes. Right now they have circles in the middle that need to be punched out. Later on, I'll insert the pole through the holes. One group is slightly larger than the other group, and that's going to be necessary later on because it's going to create a ledge that will help hold the legs into place. At this time, I'm just going to fast forward through popping out all the inserts and also gluing all of my little pieces together to create one single piece for all the parts that I'm going to need to construct the stand. Okay, now all of my parts are ready to create the tripod stand. The little skinny sticks that I'm using for the legs measure about 1.25 inches. I'm also going to use this glue eraser that I found from the Dollar Tree. It's just a piece of textured rubber and it works really well to remove any glue. This little tool works really well on removing any excess glue, and it also works on fabrics. I have been looking for another one since I bought this one, and I just cannot find them. Now I'm going to add the little sticks. I'm going to sandwich the little sticks in between two of these longer rectangle shapes. I'm placing the stick about 1/4 of the way up. I'm just lining them up evenly and pinching the pieces closed. I am pinching these pieces pretty hard and adding a lot of pressure because I really want that stick to be nice and secure inside the two pieces. Okay, now it's time to glue these two triangle pieces together. And at this point, I kind of forgot how I put this together. So I'm going to double check a previous stand and just cross-reference that to make sure that I'm putting these pieces together correctly. These pieces are glued together and it's going to be easier to kind of glue the legs upside down. Before I glue these legs on, I'm going to clean all of these pieces and you'll actually see how much glue I can remove from these 4 pieces. The little legs remind me of baking spatulas, so I may actually use this same technique later on to create some kitchen utensils. Okay, I'm just going to use tacky glue for this part. And the triangle that you see facing upward is slightly smaller than the one underneath it. And that created a tiny little ledge to help support the legs. So I'm gluing the legs to that tiny little ledge, but I will be adding additional support later on. Okay, this part is completed. I just need to make some minor adjustments to make sure that all the legs are touching the surface, they're all even and balanced, and then I'm going to let it sit and dry completely. I'm not going to fuss with it any longer. This is the package of skinny sticks that I've been using throughout this project. I believe I purchased these at my local Walmart, and I was going to use this for the stand, but I found this old paintbrush stick and it's kind of tapered at the bottom. So I decided I'm going to go with this instead. On the previous stands I made, I used a wooden barbecue skewer. I was all out at this point, so I was just looking for something to replace it. I found this old paintbrush stick that's actually tapered on the bottom. The skinny sticks would be too skinny, and this is about the same size, so I think this one's going to work. As you can see on the previous stand, I had to add an additional bracket here on the bottom to help support the barbecue skewer. This gave the barbecue skewer a little more support, and I was able to kind of glue it all into place so it stood straight up. With the paintbrush stick, I don't think I'm going to need to do that. I think I can skip that step because this bottom part is tapered. It'll go right through and then it gets nice and snug because this piece is slightly bigger than the barbecue stick. So when I go ahead and place it inside, it just sits nice and snug. So I think I can skip that part. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to use another skinny strip of the craft paper. And this time it's going to be wrapped around the top of this paintbrush stick. And I'm going to create a cap to the top of the stand. I'm double checking my previous stand, and now I need to make a little hook that's going to sit on the top of the stand attached to the cap. This little hook is going to hold the screen. I've just cut a tiny piece off of the skinny strip of craft paper, and I added some tacky glue. Now I'm just going to place it right under the cap, right along the top, and press it down nice and firm. This little hook right now is still flexible. It's not able to hold anything at this point. But once the glue dries, I can go ahead and add some Mod Podge to it, and that will harden it up. That's what I did with the previous stands. So I'm going to add a few layers of the Mod Podge, letting each one dry in between layers. While I'm doing this, I'm going to need to keep shaping the hook so that it doesn't fall flat and it keeps a curved shape. While I'm working on that, I'm going to go ahead and add some additional support to the top of the legs. I'm actually using scrap cuts from a previous project, and these are going to make really good brackets. So I'm going to place them on the top of the base and then just kind of wrap them around the side to the leg. These are going to look like kind of like metal plate supports. Okay, I've given my pieces a base coat of black acrylic paint, and now I'm going to go over that with my silver chrome paint. This is a paint pen or marker, but I like to dab the paint out and then use a brush because I feel like I have more control and I can get into the smaller spaces a little easier. Okay, my pieces are painted and I'm going to have to let them sit overnight so that they have a really good time to cure. Coming back the next day, I am beginning with adding the caps onto the bottom part of the legs. I'm just using skinny strips of the craft paper like I did previously. I also need to create the inside support beams that will help support the legs and keep them from moving around or breaking off. Before I move forward with that, I'm going to go ahead and sand areas of the paint. This will make it look worn down, age it up a little bit so that it doesn't look so brand new. I'm only sanding the first layer of the paint off, so you still see the gray, but it's a thinner layer, so you can see some of the black showing through that shade of gray. For the bottom support bars, I'm going to cut down a little toothpick and I'm going to sand the ends at an angle. This is going to help attach the pieces flush together when I glue them down. I'm just using tacky glue for this, and I'm just putting them right into place. Okay, so this is the previous stand versus the new stand, and you can see there's a little bit of a difference. The previous stand, it isn't fully opened all the way. The legs look a little closer together. On the newsstand, it looks like it's fully opened, but I'm going to put it to the test to make sure that it supports the screen and it isn't too top heavy and topples over. Okay, tiny friends, I'm almost done. I'm going to go ahead and add some additional supports to these new support bars. They're just the same cutouts that I used for the top of the legs. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the final painting. Now that it's all painted, I'm going to add a few caviar beads around the bottom part of the stand where I think there would be some added bolts or screws. And I'm going to use Aleene's jewelry and metal glue to glue those pieces down. Last, I added some aging with a little bit of watered down black and brown acrylic paints. Okay, tiny friends, that is all I have for you today. That was one heck of a project. It looked more organized than it actually was in real life. I really would like to reproduce these stands and the bases to the screens with a 3D printer and just be able to produce a higher quality version of this project and maybe list that on my Etsy site later on in the future. Whether that becomes a kit or just solid pieces, I'm not quite sure yet. But I also had to redesign the stand. So these pieces were from the first design that I came up with, and I just felt like, yes, they look a little more like the original stand, but they just weren't strong enough for me. So I went ahead and redesigned the whole stand. I'll save these and put them to use for another project. The screen is super durable and it actually feels like a real screen. So I'm really happy with the results. It's very flexible. Well, I can say it's very well put together for being made by hand. And I really do love the overall results of these. These are the two screens that I made to go along with the other projectors. I am a horror movie fanatic, so I added some classic horror movie scenes and I did list them on my Etsy shop, and they both sold last October. I did make a few extra screens for future purposes. I really hope you enjoyed this video today, tiny friends. And if you have, please click that like button and give it a thumbs up. And let me know what you thought in the comments below. If this is your first time visiting Tiny Keyhole Minis, or you're just passing through and would like to see more of my miniature creations, please hit that subscribe button and don't forget to hit that top bell notification button to be notified every time I upload a new project so you don't miss out. Let me know if you recognize these two classic movie scenes in the comments below. As always, I'd like to thank you for watching and welcome to all my new subscribers. Thank you all so much for your support. Until next time, tiny friends, I hope you all have a lovely day, and I will see you all on the mini side. Bye-bye.